She fainted in the arms of a total stranger at the mating ceremony, unaware he was the Alpha King himself. A night meant for choosing mates turns into destiny's greatest twist when Amina, the girl everyone mocked, collapses into the arms of the most feared wolf in the kingdom. What begins as a moment of shame becomes the first spark of a powerful connection that will shake traditions, expose secrets, and rewrite fate. This is a suspenseful African werewolf romance filled with emotion, twists, heartbreak, and destiny. Watch till the end, every second holds a secret. She faints in the arms of a stranger at the mating ceremony, not knowing he's the Alpha King. Everything happened in one terrifying, heart-stopping moment. The drummers had barely struck their first loud rhythm when the girl with trembling hands, Amina, the one everyone whispered about, began to sway like a leaf caught between two angry winds. It happened so fast that even the moon, hanging low and heavy over the sacred clearing, seemed to pause its glow. 1 second she was standing among the other young women, trying to hide the fear in her chest, and the next, her knees buckled. A sharp gasp cut through the crowd. Her vision blurred. Her breath thinned. Then her world turned black. And she fell, straight into the arms of a stranger no one recognized. The entire ceremony froze. Even the crickets quieted as if the night itself held its breath. People leaned forward, shocked, curious, judging, whispering. The elders exchanged glances, surprised that a girl who had always been invisible suddenly became the center of everything. It wasn't normal for anyone to collapse during the mating ceremony. It wasn't allowed to create unnecessary attention. But Amina had been carrying more weight than her thin frame could handle, years of rejection, years of humiliation, years of believing she wasn't enough. Her fainting wasn't from weakness alone, it was from the shame of feeling unchosen, unseen, and unwanted. But the stranger who caught her didn't move with panic. His arms held her firm, steady, almost protective, like someone used to holding broken things without letting them shatter further. His touch was sure, almost too sure for someone who supposedly didn't belong there. Some people noticed his micro-reactions, how his shoulders tightened slightly, how a flicker of something unreadable passed through his eyes when he looked at her face. It wasn't the look of an ordinary man. It was something deeper, older, heavier. Yet no one knew him. No one recognized his scent. In a ceremony where every wolf in the region was present, he smelled like something from far away. Something powerful. But Amina knew none of this. She was far too unconscious to realize she had collapsed into the arms of the most feared, most mysterious, most powerful wolf in the northern packs, the Alpha King himself. A man who had arrived in disguise, hidden under a plain cloak, running from the pressure of choosing a mate he wasn't ready for. A man the world believed to be heartless, emotionless, and untouchable. And yet he didn't let her fall. Before Amina lost consciousness, the last thing she felt was her own heart racing too fast, too loud, too desperate. Her life had been full of disappointments and whispered insults. People said she was cursed because her wolf had never spoken to her. They said no man would claim her. Even her own relatives looked at her like she was a burden. Her fainting wasn't just shock, it was the weight of 1,000 unspoken wounds finally crushing her. But destiny doesn't respect reputation. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for approval. Sometimes it grabs you exactly when your knees hit the ground. The moral hiding inside this moment is simple: a person who has been rejected all their life can still become the one destiny fights hardest to protect. Sometimes the world must break you first, so the right hands will be the ones to catch your fall. What no one realized was that this fall was not an accident. It was the beginning of a story that would shake the entire pack system, challenge ancient traditions, and expose secrets deeper than anyone had imagined. And as Amina remained unconscious, the stranger tightened his grip slightly, as if he already sensed she was more important than she looked. The moment Amina fainted, the entire ceremony cracked into uneasy whispers. The sacred torches flickered as if responding to the sudden disturbance. The drums stopped mid-beat, their echoes hanging in the air like unfinished sentences. People shifted, confused and irritated, because the mating ceremony was supposed to be perfect, clean, controlled, predictable. No one liked surprises. And nothing was more surprising than a girl collapsing before any of the males even made their first selection. Some women rolled their eyes. Some clutched their chests in exaggerated concern. Some muttered that Amina had probably done it for attention. But behind all the noise, behind all the judgment, stood the stranger, the one who had caught her before she hit the earth. His posture was calm, almost too calm. His breathing didn't change. His heartbeat didn't jump. But his eyes, sharp, observing, intense, never left her face. He held her like someone used to carrying responsibility heavier than any human weight. Even the elders noticed the subtle way he shifted her gently into a more comfortable position. Real wolves didn't move like that. Only someone who had spent years protecting others would have that instinct. The air around him felt different. It wasn't obvious enough for anyone to identify him, but it was enough for a few sensitive wolves to sense something ancient in his scent. Something royal. Something dangerous. But Amina remained unconscious, trapped in a soft darkness that felt too peaceful compared to the loud world she came from. In that small space of silence, she remembered the day she overheard people calling her the silent wolf, the one whose wolf voice never came, the one who might never shift. She remembered the sting of every insult, every moment she pretended she wasn't hurt, every night she cried quietly so no one would hear. Her soul had been tired long before her body gave up. She didn't know that fainting might be the safest thing that could have happened to her. Meanwhile, back in the clearing, the elders exchanged worried glances. The oldest of them lifted a hand, trying to calm the crowd, trying to maintain the ceremony's dignity. But the murmuring refused to die down. The young men shifted uneasily, unsure whether to proceed or wait. The young women kept stealing glances at the unconscious girl, secretly relieved that someone else had become the spectacle instead of them. Through all this, the stranger didn't release her. He could scent layers of exhaustion wrapped around her, fear, hunger, stress, old sadness layered like scars. It wasn't weakness, it was a soul carrying too much. His jaw tightened slightly, almost imperceptibly, a tiny reaction that hinted at an emotion he wasn't used to feeling. Concern wasn't something the Alpha King allowed himself. Yet here it was, rising in his chest like a stubborn flame. A sudden wind swept through the clearing, rustling the palm leaves overhead. It made the torches lean sideways and pushed a faint chill across the crowd. The elders took it as a sign, a shift in the night's destiny. Some of them glanced at the stranger again, their instincts whispering that he was no ordinary wolf. But they said nothing. It wasn't their place to question a man who radiated such quiet authority. The truth remained hidden. Amina had fallen into the one pair of arms she should never have reached so early. She had crossed paths with a man the world feared, a man the other alphas bowed to, a man who avoided emotional attachments because they made him vulnerable. Yet here he was, holding her like she was the most fragile thing in the room. And somewhere in the darkness behind her closed eyelids, Amina's fate shifted, rerouting itself around the stranger who refused to let her fall alone. This chapter's hidden lesson lies in silence. Sometimes destiny begins quietly, without warning, without permission, and without understanding. The biggest changes often start in the moments we cannot count. When Amina finally began to drift back toward consciousness, the world around her didn't return all at once. It came in pieces, first the heavy scent of burning shea wood from the ceremonial torches, then the distant hum of nervous whispers, then the disturbing awareness that the ground beneath her felt too warm, too steady, too alive to be earth. Her eyelashes fluttered, but she wasn't fully awake. She floated between reality and the soft darkness, unsure which was safer. The stranger still held her. He hadn't moved. Not even an inch. His arms remained firm, supporting her weight as if she mattered, as if she had always mattered. His stillness carried a strange power, like the calm in the center of a storm. It wasn't just physical strength, there was something in the way he breathed, something in the way his chest rose and fell with controlled precision, something in how his presence commanded silence even without words. Around them, the ceremony tried to regain its rhythm, but it wasn't working. The crowd kept stealing glances at the pair. The drummers hesitated to begin again. The elders whispered quietly, trying to decide whether fate had just spoken, or whether this was simply an unfortunate interruption. But nothing about the moment felt accidental. Amina stirred faintly, her fingertips twitching. The stranger's expression didn't change, but a barely noticeable shift, just a tightening around his eyes, revealed a flicker of concern. It was the kind of micro-reaction only someone paying close attention would notice. It hinted at a vulnerability he was not accustomed to feeling, especially not for a girl he hadn't chosen, a girl he didn't know. At least, not consciously. The night breeze thickened, carrying the scent of fresh earth and blooming night flowers. In their culture, the mating ceremony wasn't just tradition, it was a spiritual anchoring, a declaration that every wolf had a purpose and a partner written in the stars. Yet Amina had always believed. There was no star with her name on it. No destiny. No mate. No miracle waiting for her. But miracles are often disguised as accidents. As she lay in the stranger's arms, her mind drifted into fragments of memory, times she'd walked past the river alone while others paired off, times she'd stayed back from gatherings because she didn't want anyone pointing out her quiet wolf, times she'd wished the moon would guide her but felt nothing instead. Those memories pressed against her heart now, making her breathing uneven even in her unconscious state. The stranger felt it. He sensed the stress in her heartbeat, the faint trembling her body couldn't hide, the emotional wounds buried so deep they radiated like old scars. His grip tightened instinctively, not possessively, but protectively, like someone who recognized brokenness because he carried his own version of it. For a moment, he looked away from her face and scanned the crowd, his gaze sharp, defensive, almost threatening. Anyone paying attention would have felt the invisible warning, this girl was under his shield. Yet no one recognized him. The Alpha King had lived his life behind layers, expectations, fear, power, isolation. Nobody knew the man beneath the crown. Nobody knew the loneliness he hid behind his authority. And certainly nobody expected that the first person to touch his guarded emotions would be a girl from the sidelines, one who had spent most of her life believing she was forgettable. Amina's breathing steadied slowly. Her body relaxed, leaning fully into the stranger's hold without realizing she had given in. The crowd noticed. The elders noticed. Even the moon seemed to shift slightly, casting its silver light directly on the pair like a spotlight from the heavens. There is a truth hidden in moments like this, destiny doesn't shout, it whispers. The biggest changes come quietly, through the softness of a heartbeat, the unexpected strength of a stranger's arms, or the moment a life worn down. By rejection meets a future that refuses to let it fall again. Amina wasn't awake yet. She didn't know she had just rewritten her own fate. She didn't know she had collapsed into the arms of the only man the world said could never be touched. And she had no idea that when she finally opened her eyes, nothing about her life, or the kingdom, would ever be the same. The elders finally stepped forward, their long ceremonial robes brushing against the earth as they signaled for the drums to pause once more. The ceremony couldn't continue, not while a girl was unconscious, not while a stranger held her like she was more than a random participant. A hush rolled over the crowd as everyone waited for the oldest elder to speak. But he didn't. Instead, his gaze locked on the man holding Amina, and something in his ancient instincts stirred. He felt a presence he couldn't explain. Not fear. Not suspicion. Something deeper, something familiar. As if he stood before a storm wearing a calm disguise. The Alpha King hadn't revealed himself, yet his aura couldn't hide completely. It leaked through cracks he thought were sealed, through the way he breathed, the way the air shifted around him, the way the night itself seemed to bend in his direction. The elder's eyes narrowed slightly, noticing these subtle details. But without proof, he remained silent. Amina's body grew heavier in the stranger's arms as she floated deeper into unconsciousness. Her fingers loosened. Her breathing softened. Though she didn't wake, her spirit wasn't calm. Inside the darkness, she felt herself being pulled, through memories, fears, quiet screams she never let out. It was as if fainting had unlocked a part of her she had buried under years of disappointment. Her mind drifted to the night she overheard her aunt saying she had no future, that the mating ceremony would only embarrass her, that no wolf would ever want a girl whose own wolf refused to speak. Those words left a wound sharper than claws. And now, inside her unconscious haze, that wound throbbed again, forcing old pain to rise like smoke from burnt wood. Meanwhile, the stranger adjusted his grip. The movement was small, almost invisible, but the care behind it was unmistakable. He wasn't cradling a random girl. He was holding her like someone worth protecting. His jaw clenched for half a second, just long enough for the keen-eyed wolves to sense that something about this moment mattered to him. The crowd watched with uneasy curiosity. Jealousy simmered among some of the young women who had hoped to be noticed first. Others felt pity, but only in the shallow, passing way people show pity to avoid looking heartless. The young men shifted restlessly, uncertain whether to step close or keep their distance. Something about the stranger made them instinctively stay back. The elders signaled for space to be cleared. A wide circle formed around the pair, the earth trembling softly beneath hundreds of paws and feet. The torches flickered again, their flames leaning toward the stranger as if drawn by his energy. Amina's breathing changed, just a slight hitch, barely noticeable, but the stranger caught it instantly. He focused, his muscles tensing subtly. There was no panic in him, only a deep, controlled awareness. And just for a moment, his eyes softened, revealing a humanity the world rarely associated with kings. He wasn't supposed to be moved by anyone. He wasn't supposed to feel anything during this ceremony he had only attended out of duty. He certainly wasn't supposed to carry a girl who wasn't part of his destiny. Yet here he was. A quiet wind brushed through the clearing, lifting strands of Amina's hair across her face. The stranger's body reacted before his mind did. Leaning slightly closer, shielding her from the breeze like it was his responsibility. The elders noticed this small gesture. So did the moon. A hush settled deeper over the crowd. Something sacred was happening, though none of them understood it yet. The truth was simple, destinies were touching, even though neither heart was awake enough to recognize it. In that moment, the lesson hidden within the night was this: sometimes the universe pauses an entire crowd so two broken paths can collide and rebuild each other. Amina still didn't wake. But fate had already awakened. Ending this part as requested. The world returned to Amina slowly, like dawn creeping across a sleeping village. First came the warmth. Steady, strong, unfamiliar. Then came the hum of hushed voices, a thick cloud of whispers swirling around her like restless spirits. Before she could fully open her eyes, she felt the ground shift beneath her, not the uneven soil of the sacred clearing, but the firmness of someone's chest rising and falling against her cheek. The stranger still held her. Her consciousness hovered like a fragile leaf on water, rising and dipping between clarity and confusion. She didn't understand why her body felt weightless, why her head rested so gently, or why she could sense a heartbeat that wasn't hers, calm, powerful, unwavering. It was not the heartbeat of an ordinary man. The crowd watched with wide, curious eyes. Even those who disliked Amina felt a strange pull toward the moment, as if something far greater than the ceremony was unfolding before them. The elders stood in a half-circle, silent, awestruck, each of them feeling a crack in the order of tradition. Amina's eyelids fluttered halfway open. The world blurred into shapes, lights, shadows, drifting movement. She felt her chest tighten with embarrassment. She felt her stomach twist with confusion. She wanted to sit up, to hide, to disappear. But her body refused to move. What she didn't know was that the moment her lashes lifted, everything in the stranger stilled. His grip tightened just enough to keep her steady. His breath paused for a fraction of a second. His chest rose only halfway. A subtle but powerful microreaction rippled through him, one so small that no one else noticed, yet so deep it shook something ancient inside him. The Alpha King had seen countless faces, warriors, enemies, suitors, powerful leaders, but none had made his pulse hesitate. None had softened the cold stone he carried as a heart. But Amina, weak and half-conscious in his arms, stirred something he didn't understand. Something he wasn't prepared for. She blinked again, attempting to see clearly. The torches blurred into halos of gold. The moon looked too bright. The air felt too heavy. She sensed, even without knowing why, that the man carrying her was someone she should not be this close to. The elders stepped forward as one. Their silence was thick. Their instincts screamed caution. Something about this moment felt like the beginning of a prophecy they never learned. Amina's breath trembled. She felt the world watching her. She felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken judgments pressing against her skin. But she also felt something else, something she had never felt before in her entire existence. Safety. The stranger's arms were not familiar, yet they felt like a place she could rest without fear. Her mind asked questions. Her heart whispered warnings. Her body leaned closer without permission. Then it happened. The stranger finally moved. He lowered his head just slightly, shielding her from the stare of the crowd, as if protecting her from a world too harsh for someone so fragile. His movements were deliberate, controlled, and full of a quiet possessiveness he didn't intend to reveal. The elders noticed. Destiny noticed. Amina, still drifting between faintness and wakefulness, felt a single tear slip down her cheek, one she didn't understand. She had spent her whole life believing she didn't belong to anyone. Yet something inside her whispered that maybe somebody had been walking toward her all along. The Alpha King tightened his grip one last time before lifting his gaze to the elders, a silent signal that the ceremony, the rules, the traditions, would never be the same again. A hush swept over the clearing, deep and final. Amina finally opened her eyes fully. She looked up. And the world shifted. Her breath caught. His heart thudded once. Fate locked the moment like a sealed scroll. What neither of them knew was this: the fainting was not the end of her shame, it was the beginning of her crown. Because she collapsed in the arms of the very man the entire kingdom feared. The man no woman was allowed to touch. The man destined to change her life forever. The Alpha King. And neither of their lives would ever return to normal again. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. And hey, tell us the country you're watching from in the comments, we love connecting with all of you. Thank you, and also check our old videos.